We are recording. All right. Okay. Manvee Sharma for joining. I know, like I mentioned, very short notice, but thanks a lot. I've been looking forward to, having this conversation with you for a long time. And Just a little bit of background on my guest of honor for the day. Manvi and I used to work together. We worked together at FreshMenu. That's how we met many, many years back, where I was a business analyst and Manvi was heading up the whole digital marketing wing for FreshMenu. But right now, you're a senior global. I did a little bit of scooping on your LinkedIn to obviously get your title right. And so I know you're right now the senior global digital activation manager for Philips. But also you have quite a wealth of background. We worked in a couple of Indian startups like FreshMenu where we met, and you also spent about 6 years in Google. So
Yeah.
welcome, Manvi. Thank you so much for taking this time.
Thanks, Gautam. Thanks for setting this up and thanks for the very detailed introduction.
Yeah, no,
Looking forward to us.
I have a few more details that we're going to jump into. For example, I also remember that you were quite the yoga instructor and practitioner. So we're gonna talk about that as well, but later once we get the business out of the way. But I mean, I'd love to hear a little more. Just a high level idea about what actually your role encompasses, or what your journey's been like. You started off pretty
Hmm.
much. I can see like a theme in your entire like trajectory of your career so far. It's been around digital marketing and around that space. So I'd
Hmm.
love to just get a sense of how you started off there and where
Yeah,
you are right now.
sure. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, my whole career of 13 years so far has been in the digital world. I started out when I was, I think, 20, straight out of college, got recruited into Google. So my journey has really started from the grassroots level, where AdWords was really new, and back then in India, digital was like quite new. It was still in its infancy, and initially it was all about absorbing the new way of working. And to be honest, this I think the generation that I belong to, like when we all started out and digital was picking up, we did not have any reference to look to. Like for example, when if you are working for a traditional industry like banking, you probably have somebody in your family, and we have large families in India, as you know, that you could talk to and get some
Mhm.
references on how to shape up your career, or some best practices or tips or tricks or anything. But the generation that started in the digital environment did not have that reference, so we literally
That's
had to like
Yeah, that's
yeah,
so fascinating, right? Thinking about it, it's only been like what, I'd say a good 2 decades with the whole
yeah,
start of this
yeah,
whole sub industry, if you will, within
exactly.
marketing. And it's crazy to think that it's evolved so much. So you were there at the start of AdWords for India, right? With Google.
Yeah, but back then it was still a support organization. So we were actually doing the AdWords for international clients, like American brands or businesses, or from the European continent and etc. So India was not. We weren't catering India. India was actually a support function.
Uh-huh.
But 2 years into my time at Google, when India market started picking up, with the birth of the Flipkarts of the world, or
Yeah. Yeah.
the local e-commerce. Actually, a lot happened also because the Google India office took this initiative of bringing Indian businesses online. So
Yeah.
really, like, movers and packers, which is a complete traditional industry back then, right? In India it was completely traditional. You find classifieds in the newspaper, and then you call, or real estate, or for that matter, even travel. For that matter, travel was really something that, if you want to go, you call a local travel agent, and
Yeah.
probably this through a family or a relative, and referred this person to you. So those were, let's say, the businesses that Google took the initiative of bringing them online. And that's when the entire organization, or the offices of India, the Indian offices of Google, changed from just being support to actually doing sales within the
Uh-huh.
country.
Right. It's
And
fascinating
that's,
to think another
yeah.
contributing factor. Maybe it was a little slow, but the things like Geo and all when it came up as well would have also really accelerated how much time people spend online and
Of
um
course, yeah,
this
definitely. It kind of goes hand in hand, right? Like
right.
you have the
Yeah.
means, and then you also have the end result from it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
but
I
that's
mean that.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, no, go on, go on, go on, go on.
No, I was just saying that, that's also where my career took a curve to go to an Indian startup because of this entire
Uh-huh.
booming of the
Yeah.
internet industry in India.
So,
So yes, same goes to you.
tell me one thing. Like just to quickly go back to your time in Google, just I want to quickly ask you something that just
Mm.
just like popped up and has always fascinated me. I've always heard about the fact that Google's interviews and Google's whole process of recruitment has been unique. And it's quite hard, right? Everyone knows that it's always a little hard to. I mean, it's like the gold standard of a company to work for. I mean, great like
Hmm.
work environment and all. How hard was it actually to get in, and how did you find? I mean, I know it's been a lot of years, but
Yeah, I'm taking a path down the memory lane now with you. But to be honest, when I was giving my interviews, I didn't, like I said, I had no reference. It was my first job. I'm straight out of
uh-huh,
college. I was
uh-huh.
actually taking it so easy, and I think that's what worked
Actually,
because
that's what
now,
helps, no? If you really think about
exactly.
it, that oblivion to just how complicated this process can actually be actually helps.
Yeah. Yeah, there was no stress, right? Like for me, okay, if I don't get this job, it wasn't like, oh my God, my career is going to suffer, or I had no stress and I just went with the flow. And I think that's what worked for me.
Hmm.
And to be honest, I think, as in when we grow older, I think we should not lose this touch from, for the no stress lifestyle that we live when we are young. Because the more you stress, actually, you kind of, it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy that
Yeah,
if you think, oh, I won't
absolutely.
get this job, it's so difficult, I will not make it, then you will not make it, right? So I did not have that thought. I thought, okay, let's go with the flow, it's fun. I had, like, I think a really long process because it first started in the campus. We had
Uh-huh.
the recruiters from Google, they came, they interviewed I think 400 people, and we had to write an essay, and then we were shortlisted to like smaller groups, then 3 rounds of phone interviews, and then the final round they flew me from Mumbai, where I grew up,
Hmm.
to Hyderabad, and a whole day of interviewing with like people coming in, and the questions were like really situational questions, or like the what if scenarios, like, okay, how would you think of this if you were in this situation, what would you do? Write like, 100-word essay about it. And I thought, okay, this is so much fun. No,
Yeah.
I really thought that all interviews are like this because it's also really interesting that they focus not on your abilities to learn. I mean, not just on your abilities to learn about the product, but how you are as a person.
Right.
And after I joined Google, I realized the whole process and what goes behind it. One of the biggest things that they look at is something they call the googliness factor. And
Uh-huh.
it's a very hard thing to put your finger on, like, what does googliness mean? But to be honest, it's when now when I look back, I can make like I can interpret what it means. It basically is like, how you are as a person, what's your ethics, what are your ethics like? Are you somebody who will elbow your way in and don't care about what damage you're causing to somebody else? Or are you somebody who is more adaptive? So it's
Right.
just your personality. And if I can say, in my own calculation, I think it's about 60% weightage on how you are, and 40% on what, how good you are with the tools and the technology and stuff like
Right.
that, because that you can learn, and nobody is born with those skills, but you can fix
Yeah,
them
those are
up.
things that you can always learn. I totally agree with that. And I find that if you find a sufficiently smart person, it doesn't matter what role or what tool or what technology. I mean, the person will figure
Exactly.
out as long as that person has that motivation. But you want to hire a person basis their personality, right? If they fit into your
Hmm.
work culture and they can adapt to it. That makes a lot of sense. And
Exactly.
another thing I really liked what you said was that the fact that we should not give up on that no stress approach to interviews. And that's exactly what happened with me and Amazon. I was interviewing
Hmm.
with two companies at that time. One of them Amazon, and I was really keen on the other one, and that fell through. And then
Hmm.
I was so disappointed. I was so saturated that with Amazon I was just like I was at a level of no stress. I had already gone through the lows of lows. So with Amazon I was just chill. I was just myself, and I think that really helped. And
Yeah.
it's so easy to get worked up with these things, especially when you have named brands like these. It's so easy to
Yeah.
like sort of build it up in your head, and you realize that this is the exact opposite of what you should be doing. But
Yeah, exactly. And
mhm,
I think one of the thing is like just be yourself, right? Like that is also what the Google interview made me think
mhm,
that I know that after that every interview that I gave, I always, and to be honest, I'll be like really candid about this. I think the whole process of many companies, how they interview you is so wrong
it's
because
so wrong. It's so wrong.
you will ask questions that we have come prepared to give you the right
Right.
answers for.
Tell me
So
about your
what
5-year plan. Tell me where you see it.
exactly?
Come on. I
I
mean, those
mean,
are,
so yeah, exactly. And why do you have to even go through this process? Because you kind of know what I'm going to say, or any candidate will say.
yeah,
So I really then realized that you should ask questions that are general, that you understand this person's personality, how they are, how will they adapt to a situation that's not
yeah,
good, or if they have to take a moral decision. That is what defines them, not how you see yourself 5 years from now, because nobody saw corona, right? 5 years ago.
exactly, right?
So
How
then,
can
yeah.
another thing that very quickly I want to vent my frustration on is specifically is the Indian recruitment process. Because I don't know
Hmm.
what it is with a lot of these Indian recruiters, it's a power play thing, you know? The
Yeah,
guys who
I
come to
have.
interview you are,
Yeah.
I'm the boss here, or I'm the guy. You need to impress me. Why does it have to be that way? I mean, what impression are
Oh
you
yeah.
setting, right?
I can give you good nuggets from my experience with Indian recruiters, good and bad ones.
Uh-huh.
And bad as in like it's now when I look back, it's funny, and I mean I find it like really. I think that the person was just on a power trip.
Uh-huh.
Because I was going through this interview with with a company. It was in Delhi, and the interviewer called me to the office, and then the boss, I think, or the guy, the hiring manager, he was in there, and he started like playing mini golf, and I'm like, okay, and not in like a fun way, right? Like you can say, okay, come, let's play, and then okay, that's also fine because you're kind of like warming up the
Uh-huh.
environment. This was more like I have to sit, and the guy is playing golf, and he has a very serious face, and he's like, so where do you, why
Oh
do you
my
want to
God,
work
one
for
of
us?
those.
Yeah, and I just in my head, I'm like, okay, you know what? I know this is not going to work out. Even if I get this job, I will be unhappy, and you will be unhappy because I won't be, giving you the right output. So yeah, you are right. There's a lot of like this ego power, and maybe it happens in other countries and cultures too. But yeah,
I
since
think it's
my
especially
background is from
prominent,
India.
especially prominent with India. But oh, nice little this thing diversion rant that we went off on. But I want to come back to one thing, which I think is really fascinating. Is you've actually been there for like pretty much the entire evolution of digital marketing in India, right? For the most chunk of it,
Yeah.
and you've seen it go from AdWords. And what's that been like? I because I came into that market when it was quite maybe at the peak or reaching where
Hmm.
the other countries are, but. At what point did it go from, say, search ads to then it's
Hmm.
spreading out into social media and then spreading out into um, everything else? How did you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the industry had, this whole internet industry or businesses related to internet, they have seen growth in the fastest manner that's never happened before, right? Like this
Hmm.
kind of growth and change and constant evolution, it's too fast for some brands to catch up on. I think you always have to not, so it's not about what you can do now, it's about what you will do next. So that's like the mindset, like okay, so it started from search where things actually were easy. Back then it seemed okay different because you have to show yourself in the front, at the top three positions. So that was the fight. But then after that, when more mediums opened, like Google started the retargeting one or remarketing, I think it was called back in those days, display remarketing. And then Facebook started, social became a big thing, and now you see even Facebook social is not like the big thing. It's getting more into direct selling via social media, like the e-commerce part of social media. Who would have thought that, let's say 10 years ago, that you would not be selling on your website anymore, or not as much, or that's not the only place, but actually you can sell via your Instagram account.
Yeah, crazy, right?
That's
I mean,
insane.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's like from the first touch point of the user, you immediately can convert. You no longer have to
Yeah.
send them to another. Yeah, I think that was a game changer.
Yeah.
Really.
And now, exactly. And with WhatsApp as well, right? Like so many small businesses, and
Right.
especially in this COVID times, it has helped. I think digital transformation would not have happened without COVID, as not in the same pace as it did because of this lockdown.
Hmm.
So many small businesses like who don't even have a website. You don't even need a web page anymore, right? If you have social media presence, and if you just put things like DM me if you're interested to buy, I can just send a message saying, hey, I would like to buy this. And then I have bought this, at least in Netherlands. I follow a lot of these small businesses and small antique stores, or vintage stores, and I really like cupboard, and I said I want it. Can I? Are you selling it? And they're like, yeah, this is the price. They sent me what we call a tiki here in Netherlands. It's like a payment link,
Uh-huh.
and that's it. I paid, and it was delivered to me. Can you
Yeah,
imagine that, right?
that's crazy, right? I mean, it's almost it can even be a passive source of income for a lot of people. No, maybe, yeah, kind
Yeah,
of, right? For a lot of people
yeah,
who are holding a normal 9 to 5 job, it just supplements.
exactly.
I mean, it's insane what that's provided. But tell me one thing. Did you find, that a lot of these industries were perhaps fighting this move to digital marketing? Because I used to get that impression with some of
Hmm,
these startups that I consulted for a couple of times.
hmm,
I would get like they're holding back on how much they should actually be spending. Well, there are two reasons for that. One is because they've done it before and it was spent completely in the wrong way. It was spent
hmm.
on the money was just burnt essentially, on
Yeah.
flashy campaigns which actually provided no conversion, had absolutely zero ROI. But
Hmm.
the otherwise also it's a struggle for them to accept that okay, this is a viable platform to invest in. How do you
Yeah. So yeah.
go on?
Sorry.
No, no.
No, so I think a lot of it is because of firstly, I think the novelty of the industry, right? Like if you think about it, I used to always look at it that way when I worked at Google, because we were given the task to, let's say, bring like these traditional businesses online, and the questions that we would get from the business owner, because this they only understand I'm putting in money in this business. If you tell them that you won't get short-term ROI, like immediate conversions, but you get brand building, and in the next 2 years this happens, that happens, they don't understand that language. For them it's like, what is this, then how is it any different than me putting an ad on a newspaper? At least I know
Right.
that this works, I have done this before. So a lot of those inhibitions were because the entire concept is very new for them to digest. And I think if we break it down into, let's say, a startup culture, where, and especially a startup that's backed by a VC, then it becomes even more difficult, because the startup owner has to give an answer to their investors, where they have spent their money, what has happened. And sometimes many things don't happen at the same time, especially in digital, right? Like if you start spending money now to show your ads on, let's say, Facebook or social media, any social media, you won't get 10 orders a day
Oh,
guaranteed.
yes,
That's not going to
absolutely.
happen.
I think a lot of people took time to grasp this concept because I used to
Yeah.
remember we'd run a campaign or do something, and including me. And I don't want to like put this on anyone else. I would expect immediate results. Like the
Yeah.
times at FreshMenu when we'd really work hard on a campaign, come up with something nice, and we'd put it out, and you see a performance which is like I would think, oh my god, this would like tomorrow the numbers are going to be crazy because this is such an amazing campaign. But
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. It took me a little while to grasp that this is a very slow burn process, despite the fact it's a new, constantly evolving,
Hmm.
changing medium. It's still a slow burn process because your true value will come as long as you have a quality campaign running. Your true value only comes with time. I think that
Exactly. And I think,
that was a
yeah,
concept that
no,
was
you're
very
right.
hard to
And
grasp. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's where I really like the, A/B testing part of this whole
Uh
digital
huh.
thing.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it also, it's a very scientific way of doing marketing now, right? You can't just put in like an ad and then let's say, okay, I'm just doing it for awareness, because that was like maybe 20 years ago it worked. Many things that we did 10, 20 years ago don't stand true right now. What I really like about the digital part, and that's always was my pitch to people who didn't understand digital, is like, when you burn money, or when you, no, let's not say burn, let's say invest. When you invest money in a TV ad, Once it's out there, it's out there. Same with radio. You can't change it. You can't pull it back. Your A/B testing is done, sample group of people. There's a lot
Right.
of bias in it. But when
Right.
you think about digital, you can actually test in a real world with the real audience. Spend only 10% of your cash. See
And
how it
change
is
on the fly.
working,
Right. You
change
can
on
change.
the fly, and if it's not working, pull the plug out. Like, you don't have to wait okay, I have spent now 100K and I can't get it back in. That's not true. So I think that mindset change, I think it's coming now, at least in the Indian market as well. But it's a lot more. My realization has been that since I started working in this industry, then expand. So first you test. If things are working, you move forward. If they are not working, you optimize them. If they still are not working, go back to the drawing board. Which was, and I think initially when I came here, I like also looking at it from a cultural perspective. In India, it's like do or die, right? Like you do
Right.
it, go
Yeah.
for it now. If it, there is no time to test things, at least in startups, right? Like they're firefighting every single day.
No.
And
Yeah. The
here things are much slower. So initially I thought that, why are they so slow? But I realized it's actually the right thing to do. Go slow, as in like, slow in the sense, test, learn, fail faster so that you can improve, in the long run. So I
yeah.
think that process is
This
helpful.
what you just mentioned, no, the do or die thing. I think with that whole startup bubble in India,
Hmm.
it was just like fascinating, or it was like watching
It's
a
like
disaster
Hunger
waiting
Games.
to happen, with so many of these startups just burning money like crazy on your
Yeah.
campaigns, on your acquisitions, and at one point you start realizing this can't be the way to do it, right? This absolutely cannot be this insane, like,
No.
okay, put in like, I don't know, 10 lakhs into this campaign, blow it up, and then tomorrow all our numbers, all our problems are solved, and we are going to be a successful business. It just used to it took me a
And
while.
the problem,
Yeah, go
yeah,
on.
and I think the problem is that, when you spend, let's say 100K in an Indian startup, and with the intention that, okay, if I spend 100K, I will get 3x back, which never ever happens, right? Like even in the best campaign, it will take some time, things build up. But because there is a lack of patience for it, or the thought is that we have to survive, we have to make every day, we have to make this much amount of money, because otherwise we die, or our competition takes over. There is no time to reflect back on what happened, what could have happened better, what happened, what we did wrong. And the
Hmm.
solution to that is also very short term, that, okay, let's run an offer, let's do a sale because we need numbers. So the numbers of, obsession with getting that X% whatever sales per day is deeply integrated into, at least back then, right? Like 5 years ago when I was working, maybe things changed, so that's also the case. But it was so into it that we are constantly on survival mode, and whenever you are on survival mode, you will never grow.
Yeah, I
Even
absolutely
if you
agree.
look at civilizations,
I think we
yeah,
spend too much time
even if you
chasing
look
a
at
certain target.
civilizations, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, it
Yeah.
was just, it
So I
was
think
crazy for
we
me.
need
It
to
was like,
sometimes pull the brakes, right?
pull the brakes, yeah, pull the brakes and like stop and
Yeah.
reevaluate. Because another thing that used to really worry me during that time was this discount hunting behavior that we were creating within users. Every time if you fall back to giving a sale to drive your numbers up every time, you've essentially created a behavior pattern with your user, right? Now your users only ever going to say convert if
Hmm.
there is like there is a sale available for him to say, come on,
Yeah,
and it
you're
makes
changing
sense.
behavior.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
exactly.
right. So that used to always worry me about that. But tell me one thing. User, I mean, our audience is smart, all right? Especially the younger
Hmm.
generation, they're used to this. Now they're growing up seeing your campaigns day in, day out. All your companies are bombarding you. Aren't we reaching like a saturation level for users? Now, like speaking from experience, like I just like swipe past ads or anything on Instagram or anything. I do not have the patience to. My immediate reaction is to just swipe up the minute I see it's an ad, or unless YouTube subjects me to watching that without skipping, even then I'm barely paying attention. We
Yeah.
have Aren't we reaching a point where user is just sort of saturated with these current forms of advertising or mediums of advertising?
Well, it's a very interesting topic. It's something that I'm also doing my thesis on. But I'm putting it more on the personalization front, for example, because I think, of course, there are more ads than ever, right? Like every day you have new ads and every new business is putting in money into it. There is that fatigue or saturation point that everybody would reach, because it's not exciting anymore, right? Like what's new? That's why, and sorry, again coming back to personalization, because that's become a part of a core part of people's advertising strategy in companies, then we need to personalize things, because attention span is very little. People want to know, if you know what the person's interests are, you are able to get their attention faster. But the thing is that the personalization has taken things to a level where you are putting people into like this mundane, most obvious suggestions or things that they probably already know. And the younger generation is really smart, right? Like they are exposed to the internet more than we were, so
Right.
they already know these things. The point is that, while it is a problem, there is also room for change and changing the narrative. And I think one of the interesting things is this, creating a moment of serendipity, which
Hmm.
basically means showing them things or showing people things which are interesting but also unexpected. Because because you're breaking the noise, then you're like, creating a aha moment for people, like, hey, I didn't know this, or hey, this looks cool. And that could be that is what I think we need to kind of like go back from where we came. So we came all the way here into personalizing things, making things more efficient, and matching the person's journey and whatever, which works at for some products. But if you are trying to get them, to be with you or retain them, we as marketeers or brands themselves need to create that aha moment, or that moment of surprising the consumer, delighting the consumer, and not just think of them as numbers or a conversion that could come out of it, right? Like you have to treat people as people too. So I think there is saturation, but it can be changed. I don't think it's a problem in that sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know why? That's why it's so refreshing to sometimes see a company which goes the absolute opposite way. Like Tesla, for example, does not even have an
Mm.
ad budget. It's crazy, right? And
Yeah.
they're doing phenomenally well, right? And it's all because they focus. I think Elon Musk specifically focuses on product quality
Um,
and like just like pure innovation. People just
yeah.
people just. I mean, Tesla is riding a golden wave right now. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
gonna.
it's what Apple did, right? Like years
Yeah,
ago, what
yeah,
Steve
yeah, yeah.
Jobs and Apple did. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that unfortunately hasn't, I don't know, aged well, but let's see how that goes. But also another kind of marketing or advertising that I really like is what Red Bull does. They don't
mm.
they never really just advertise the drink, right? All their
Yeah.
campaigns, all the things that they do are just these adventurous, really,
Concepts.
really,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
insane like stunts or things like the man jumping the highest halo jump that happened. I think that was sponsored by Red
Mm.
Bull, and that's crazy. And you just associate that brand, and immediately that you just have such a strong brand association with things like that.
Exactly. And I think that's also because, firstly, it's unexpected, right? Like you would not expect that from a drink, for
Right,
example. So I
right.
think that creates that moment that I was mentioning earlier.
Uh-huh.
Secondly, it is also different than what other brands in the same beverage industries are doing. So that also stands Red Bull out. And thirdly, I think that, people are, they are not selling the product, but they are selling the lifestyle, or the concept behind it. For
Right.
example, I think if you just take any product, right? Like for example, if you sell a phone, you are not selling, you of course the phone is a medium to do the things that you can do, but that's not your advertising, right? That, hey, this is a phone, it's so cool. You are selling what you can do with it.
Right.
What's the emotional benefit of using that product, or how is it matching your senses. And I think that's, again, like I said, we have to kind of go back, because if you remember the TV ads from when we were kids, they used to sell concepts. They never sold products. Products were a part of it, but it was about what this product can do to you, what's the value of it that you
Hmm.
can benefit from. So I
Yeah.
think that is interesting to see how the digital world is now also kind of moving away from this completely conversion driven thing to
Right.
also introducing the
The concept. Let me
concept
so
part of it. Yeah.
let me play the devil's advocate here and ask you regarding digital marketing and the whole digital media space. Do you think it's possible that a robot will eventually, or and when I say robot, I mean AI. You
AI.
have
Yeah.
a completely automated ML driven platform that can do this job end to end.
Um, I
I'm
think,
talking about from acquisition to retention, the entire cycle of user journey for a platform, for a company. Do you think
yeah,
well, I'm essentially asking is, do you think a robot will
our
one day
jobs can be
replace your job?
replaced. Well, I hope not. No, but I think, this whole AI part of the for using machines to do things that humans can do, it's not new, right? It has happened throughout our history. Many
Right.
things were done by people and then it was replaced by machine,
Hmm.
and it worked, right? It's a good thing. I think it's good if things can be done in a more efficient manner, then
Right.
yes, please bring it on, because then the human mind can focus on bigger and better things.
Hmm.
Otherwise we will keep doing the same things in a very robotic way. We kind of become machines ourselves. So I think yes, AI will definitely take up a lot of the work that's done now by people or humans. However, we should never forget that tools are enablers. They are not the ones that create strategy. You still need a human, because
Interesting.
your end user is also a human being.
Right.
So you need people in at the start and at the end of the process, but what happens in between can definitely be shaped by AI. And also the people who build these AI are humans. So there is a lot of thinking that should go into algorithms, the ethical part of it. Is it right? Is this because it a machine can do its job, but it needs to be told what to do, and that
The
should
black
come
box.
from a
Yeah. But that's a
yeah.
very gray area, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
I honestly find myself on either side of that argument every time this comes up. The way I think about it is, why shouldn't you feed all this data into an algorithm and let
Hmm.
it iterate and create biases basis the data, and then evolve its biases as the data changes, versus
Hmm.
human intervention, because we it doesn't conform to certain, say, social standard. I don't want to call out any particular examples, but
Hmm.
we feel uncomfortable with the an AI or ML coming back and telling us certain patterns that it sees in the data, because it sort of caters to something that your company wants to move away from, or caters to an idea about a certain sect of your demography.
Hmm.
Say something, it comes and says something, like, yeah, women are more, something very generic. Let me quote, like, okay,
Hmm.
the platform analyzes the data, comes back and says, okay, show more products which are, say, colored in pink for women, and they will buy it. Okay.
Hmm.
And you think, hey, this seems like you know it's such a bias, and the data is like telling us something that we,
Stereotypical.
yeah,
Yeah.
stereotypical. But if
Mm.
if honestly you have enough data, and
Yeah.
it's backing it up with solid results, why should we not give in to this bias, or give in to this black box, and let it
Oh,
naturally evolve as user behavior evolves? I'm not saying we stick with that, but we let it
yeah.
evolve. If this is the
Yeah. No,
current trend, then why not?
I think that's a very good point that you bring up, right? Like I always think that, if your data will tell you things that, your human eye can't see, because it processes large volumes of information. So if your engine or your, data says that, for example, what you gave, right? Like pink color, let's say banners work better for women and then it doesn't work for men. This is not based on one person's opinion. It's not based on a small set of data. If you have big data, if you have like, thousands and thousands of units that have been measured, and that's where the conclusion comes, and it's significantly effective, that okay, this, we know it will work for sure because we've looked at, I don't know, like 20,000 of data points, and this is the result of it. I think then it's on the brand manager or whoever is in charge of taking the decision to be confident, to believe in their data and do it. And also be confident that if this raises questions, because maybe it creates an outrage, that oh, how stereotypical, etc., you can say that it was based on data, and data is collected by people themselves. So it's not a decision that I sat here and signed off because I think that pink works for women. We ran this test and we saw that how people responded, and most of them were women, and that's where we come to this conclusion. So I think you can also use data for justifying your decisions towards the outside world, and this is something that the research community has been doing for a very long time, right? Like
Right.
they do
Right.
researches, they also mention that what amount of bias is in this data. You just need to be transparent that okay, this is what the data says, so it's completely objective. There is of course, like, what are the control variables, what was the bias, and all of that. And based on this we conclude that this is what the next step should be. I
This
think it just needs somebody to take that decision.
Yeah, that's the thing. We are too I don't know, focused on. We are too like wary, and we are constantly trying to be so politically correct all the time. We are in fact, regressing in some ways if you think about it. But yeah, that's a whole
Yeah,
topic
only
for
in the
another.
marketing
Yeah.
field, I think.
Yeah,
But no, I think you definitely need another podcast with somebody from the research industry, because when you talk to scientists, they don't. That's at least my feeling when I've spoken to people who have done researches. They don't have these opinion or scared of being politically correct or any. They are not politically correct, and they also say this is what the data says. It's not me. It's not you. This
right.
is what we observe, and of course there are limitations to every observation. So I think that people need to start looking at things objectively. And yeah, I think it's our opinion. Of course, it doesn't mean that it will happen tomorrow, but it should happen in the long run.
Yeah, it's yeah, hopefully it does. It does happen in the long run. But tell me one thing, like you worked for like 6 years with a company as big as Google. At what point
Mhm.
did you get a concussion and decide to give all that up and jump into startups?
I'll tell you this, Gautam. When I started working at Google, I was 20 years old with
Uh-huh.
no previous work experience, straight out of college. This seemed to me like an extended college or university,
Uh-huh.
because my whole peer group was like of the same, sect. Like we all were like freshers out of college. Honestly speaking, when I look back now, if that happens to me today, if I get a job at Google today, I will do things much differently than I did back then,
Uh-huh.
because then I was
Of
not
course, you were
serious in
young. I
many ways.
mean, same with me, right? When I started off, when I look back and I think, damn, I should have done a few of those things very differently.
Exactly, but that's life, right? Like
But
we
that's right,
always are
right?
in
Hindsight is
hindsight, everything is
2020. Hindsight is
exactly.
2020.
But you know what? I think when I started out, firstly, it was also all too new, right? Like how does this online world work? It was not something that was deeply, ingrained in our system as Indian youth of what was that 2007. It was
Uh-huh.
not a part of our life. Smartphones did not exist in our country then, so it was not a part of my life like most of us. So I think everybody kind of struggled and picked up. And you're also young, your minds are malleable, you kind of like go with the flow, you make mistakes. So I know I made a lot of mistakes, and I'm happy I did it back then because it shaped up my career path later. I realized when I was working at Google that I think I'm a better fit in an organization where I can influence some things.
Right.
Because in a big organization, especially then I was, I think, 25 when I quit Google, too young to take big decisions and not fully exposed to the business side of things.
Hmm.
So I was very good at selling, what a business should do, like consulting basically, or looking at, okay, these are your numbers, this is your product, this is the strategy and the tools that will work for you. But I felt I'm missing out from the business perspective,
Right.
because you may give a very good consult the best that you can to an organization, but they have their own problems, right? Like just because a person from Google tells them invest 100K, and because we tell you that mobile apps are the next big thing, blah blah blah, this person is a business person, and they're like, I don't understand what you're saying, and I have other problems. Their problems could be something that the logistics are not working, or it is that they don't have resources in house. I felt that I'm a better fit there.
Uh-huh.
I can work better. So I quit Google and I joined, the Indian startup world. And I think for me, that's when my learning curve went up really high. Like it
Yeah,
was
absolutely.
so
I
steep.
I mean that I completely agree with you. The learning curve in startups is insane. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no hand holding. You're just thrown in the deep end and you
yeah,
figure it out. And it
exactly.
was around that time, I think that around the same time I think you made the leap to startups. I quit my first job a year and a half in, a
Hmm.
year and like 2 3 months in, and then I jumped into the startup world as well. And
Yeah.
it was around that time that everyone was just like, okay, startups are the place to be. You need to like work in a startup, have a couple of
Yeah.
years over there. But uh, do you think that still holds true now? Do you think that market is still like
Um.
that? I mean, it's
Well,
hard to
I
say
think
because both of us have not been around for a while. I know it's been a couple
I
of
know.
years since
Yeah.
we spoke. Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, whatever that I hear from my friends and folks back in India, I think right now, and startups, first of all, like, what is a startup? Like, if we also just break it down, it's basically that you decide to start a business. This could be anything, right?
Right.
Not necessarily online. Tomorrow, if I decide that I don't want to work in a corporate anymore and I'm going to start my yoga studio, that's also a startup. It's just
Absolutely.
that with the if you add the digital part of it, then it becomes an internet startup, and then this whole the concepts of digital world come into play. So I think that is still happening, and it will continue to happen, especially in a country like India, where now even with the way mobile services are being introduced into the country, many people are now coming on, they're starting the journey straight online. There's the youth of India is more, let's say, empowered to do so in many ways. You don't really need to, let's say, even know English for that matter, because we are a big country. We have so many different subcultures and
Yeah, that's true.
languages and
Mhm.
all sorts of differences. Like, I know somebody who I we both work with in FreshMenu, and he has a startup in Kerala, and the entire app is built in Malayalam, the local language of that state, and it's about educating the underprivileged students of the state,
Oh
like
wow.
kids who, yeah,
Is this
exactly.
Arun?
And Arun, yes.
Oh wow. I
That's
need
Arun.
to talk to him about this. This is fascinating.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. And could you imagine this? Like, at let's say 5 years ago, the first thing that comes to your mind, because you're so like, in that zone, that a startup means that, okay, it's like this whole digital thing. It's, everything is like kind of an American company, or at least like, how the Silicon Valley in the US is. But it's not like that anymore. There are a lot of things happening in India which are happening at a very hyper local level.
Hmm.
People are doing things in regional languages. People are starting out with like two three friends doing things in their
Out of
house.
their garage, out of their single room. Yeah, absolutely. You
Yeah.
have.
So yeah, so that's similar to what happened in Silicon Valley, but of course this is like in a different fabric. It's more regional, it's Indian, it has its Indian system of setting up the company. So I think it's still growing and it will continue to grow. And same I see in the Netherlands as well. I've been here now for 3 years, and initially, like, Netherlands is known for like some other kind of specialisms, right? Like they have trade, they have a lot of like Eindhoven is more on the technical side of things,
Right.
but now Amsterdam and Rotterdam they kind of have the startup culture. They have people who are coming out of Delft Technical University, and they're starting out with their own products, and these are like really products that maybe something like an app which helps you, I don't know the ratings of beer or wine in the
Uh-huh.
world,
Right.
something like that. Fun things already, like financial fintech is picking up, or it's e-commerce, or like services. So I think it will happen. It just becomes a norm for people to who are business oriented to
Uh-huh.
have the same kind of things that 5 years ago we had to go through when we started to work with startups.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I mean, I'm sure both of us can agree. Like a lot of benefits with working in that environment. That's just the learning is incredible. Like, and you also get to
Yeah.
dabble in like. I mean, I was primarily in FreshMenu. I was hired as a business analyst, but I
Yeah.
was all over the place, and luckily so because I got to learn so much about your side of the business. And
Yeah.
dabble in that as well because and I would not have got that exposure if I had not worked in a startup. If in a bigger organization
Absolutely.
you're lined to that you say your main priority and that's it. You don't get to there's not much scope to explore outside of that. But
Absolutely. There are more silos in a big company, because
exactly.
also it's such a large organization. They kind of those silos also work for them because everybody's then contained and they do the best in that space. But it's what works for you, right? Like I still carry my startup mentality with me, even though I work for a large organization like Signify.
Uh-huh.
Because when we were at FreshMenu, I remember that when we started out, simple things like looking at keywords and then seeing, oh yeah, a lot of people search for breakfast online,
Uh-huh.
and then telling the founder that, hey, this is what we see, and even if it's a niche market, let's try it. And because it's a startup, you can try these kind of things, right? You can make a sample product immediately, quickly call the chef, and Rashmi was like, yeah, yeah, okay, what's the best thing, what's most convenient, and then she added her business sense to it. Then it snowballs into a bigger thing, which becomes a revenue generating stream for the startup.
Oh yeah,
And in a big
absolutely.
organization, yeah, in a big organization, if you have an idea because you see, okay, I'm looking at some searches that are coming in and maybe this is something we can do, it has to go through a whole bureaucratic process, that first approvals, finance
Uh-huh.
approvals, business approvals,
Yeah.
legal approvals, etc.,
Oh, I
etc.
absolutely
So
missed that. Just being coming up with an idea and like straight away piloting it. That still it still sticks with me to think, wow, to go through that and be they have the ability to do that. No organization now, no, and rightly so. No organization of
yeah,
scale will have that ability to do because there's too many ramifications
too
of a
much
decision
risk.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, too much
Uh.
risk. But I still think you should not lose that touch, of coming up with ideas, because that's also what I learned at Google. Like my first 5 6 years were where I literally, my growth, my foundation is in that culture, right? Like,
Right.
think out of the box, come up with ideas, don't let things stop you from doing it. And of course you learn on the way and you make your mistakes, and it takes time, but it's somewhere so deeply ingrained and working in a startup that even now, if there is some idea, I know that it won't work that fast, right? Like as it did with FreshMenu, that okay, today you have an idea, tomorrow the product is out. And it's
Right.
also because the industry was quite agile, like food industry. You can cook food faster than you can make a product, like an end hardware product. So that
Yeah.
is of course different. But these ideas, they help steer conversation. So maybe your idea won't be adopted, or it won't be executed exactly, but it helps steering conversation within such a big company where otherwise silos kill creativity. So I think you should not let go of that, even if it's difficult. And that's where I feel that coming from a corporate, going to a startup, and coming back to a corporate, I think it helps. It helps me. It helps the company that I work for in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the downside, when I think back at my experience with startups working, the burnout rate, like
Hmm.
you can get burned out so like because it's everything's moving so fast. There's
Hmm.
and it's just s- I mean there used to be weeks where I would work just weekends. There was basically no weekend, that someone would
Yeah.
ping me and ask me, okay, let's put this together. We have that meeting with the investors on Monday, Tuesday. We need to have this one deck put together. And we just, the burnout rate is so
Hmm.
high. And
Yeah.
that's one problem if you are, I would say, doing if you get into a startup and you're doing well, and if they see that you have potential to contribute a lot, you're going to be utilized like to 120%.
Yeah.
It's
Definitely.
scary. Eh,
Yeah, definitely. The burnout part is like quite prevalent in like such small companies also, because there is no boundaries, right? Like, and the thing is that the business owner or the founder is so close to the problem that for them, and they're fully invested in it. So
You're fully
therefore, they
invested in
also,
it. A
yeah.
lot more than
And
a bigger
imagine,
organization or your manager in your current organization would be, right? They
exactly.
have skin in the game.
Exactly. So imagine their state of mind, right? Like I worked for Baby OA before I joined FreshMenu, which was a baby e-retail company,
Uh-huh.
and it was started by a couple, and they started it, and it became one of the biggest online retail companies for kids products. And after that, afterwards, I'm still friends with the the founders, and because we used to go to yoga together.
Uh-huh.
And she mentioned to me that you have no idea the amount of stress I had to go through. She was the founder, right? Co-founder.
Right.
So I was like, imagine their state of mind. It's even worse than the people who work there. But of course, the rewards part is different, right? Like when you own the company, you're invested because you also get rewarded if it works. But when you work in the company, you get only what you have been assigned to in terms of your salary. So I guess that's where the problem starts. You start feeling the burnout because you're like, okay, I'm putting in extra effort, I am ready to help you, but I'm at the end of the day only going to get that X fixed salary that I'm going to get. So what is it for me,
Yeah.
apart from of course the learning experience? And
Yeah.
after your learning experience is saturated, then the burnout can happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And another thing that bothered me a lot, and just like my observations across the startups that I worked with, ethics are a little loose in that environment. When it comes to specifically, because I was very close to the data, right? My
Mm-hmm.
roles predominantly dealt with data wherever I went, and
Mm-hmm.
in that. I mean, I can only speak of my experience with the Indian startup culture, but in that
Mm-hmm.
environment, ethics were very loose and very like people people took a lot of liberties and things that if you did in a big corporation would result in you getting fired, or if not more, criminal cases per se. I know of people who've taken when they've left these organizations, these small startups, they've taken their data with them, whatever data they had about
Mm-hmm.
customers and all, they would have taken that with them and they've used it in their new job.
Organization.
And
Yeah.
that's such a blatant abuse of and somehow at that point it also fascinated me that not a lot of people cared too much. There were not a lot of blocks put in. Like, it was so easy for someone to get that data and just walk out the door.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like it has a lot. Such a problem is created because of a lot of things, right? Like first is of course I think the person individual ethics of the person. I think you would not do that, right? Because you somewhere know, yeah, maybe it's not nice for from a model point of view, it's not nice for the consumer. They did not sign up to be bombarded by whatever emailers or ads of some company that they don't even know of because they didn't sign up for it. It's not good for the business because you are kind of like giving the red carpet to the competition. So I think firstly I feel that individual ethics are of course like the factor that plays a big role in this. But secondly, you're right that why doesn't the organization themselves safeguard their own data and their consumers from such a thing, from letting such a thing happen?
It was
um,
crazy.
yeah.
When I moved on from one startup to the other, the founder and the
Mm.
marketing head, we were having a meeting and they asked me, do you have the data from the previous startup, and like we can use it, we can target some of those. And they could tell I was very uncomfortable with that conversation and they never brought it up again. But it was so openly discussed and it was so
Yeah.
like, openly requested. It just makes me think this is like seems like and these guys had worked in other startups apart from especially the marketing head and all. So it
Yeah.
made me think like, damn, this is like an open secret, or people are openly discussing, ripping off another
Yeah.
startup's data and then using it. It just seemed,
Well, yeah, I think that's also the reason why the privacy laws are becoming stricter, right? Because I think we have experience from Indian startup. Maybe it happens in other places as well. Like in Europe, GDPR is super strong because they
super
protect
strong.
the consumer. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they protect the consumers. And to be honest, I think GDPR, the European privacy laws are now being looked at as the gold standard. So even America, which is like extremely consumerism or capitalism is the peak in that country, they will send 5 emails if they have to get sales out of you, right? Like it's everywhere. There's too much advertisement, etc.
Right.
But they are adopting the GDPR laws for their own country as well because of the nobody has fought for nobody saw it coming. Let's just say that way, that things escalated so fast in the digital world that we have laws for, let's say, the offline world, right? Like there are strict laws because they also probably went through problems, they learned from it, and they made laws to protect it. But
Right.
the online thing went so fast and data became like super important. It's like the modern currency. And also not just like 10 pieces of information, you can know everything about millions of people.
Hmm.
So it went so fast that nobody really knew what is the right thing to do. Everybody will have their own stance, right? Like, no, should be allowed, why is it not allowed, or maybe it should. Nobody really cared, but now it's coming because people realize that it's as important as your criminal laws in the offline world are. It is as important to protect somebody's identity and not make them not sell their data, or like let their data be taken away by some other organization because there is no law that governs it. So I think it will come. It's sad that
It
it
should
took,
come. It absolutely should. We
yeah,
require that. I mean, at the scale things are moving, they really, really need to bring this in. Another thing that
exactly.
really, uh, really also angers me is the way you have so many of these misleading campaigns that I don't know if you're following whatever's happening with White Hat Junior. It's this.
uh, not not really, no. What about it?
Oh, they've have this. They've been running these ad campaigns. So they're a learning platform where they're pushing for kids to learn coding
Yeah.
from a very early age. But their ad campaigns are so misleading and so
Hmm.
outright just lies. They talk about some kid who's made an app and has got a job with Google, and they use these brand names and they create a fake character, and then they talk, okay, this 10-year-old kid created this app for blind people, and it's on the store and it's download, but you look for the app, you look anywhere, you don't find it. And
So gimmicks, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
but they have a lot of money. All right.
Hmm.
White Hat Junior has a lot of money. They're backed by Baiju. They were
Hmm.
acquired by Baiju, and Baiju itself has your investors from, like, say, Facebook and all.
Yeah.
All of these organizations, by the way, I don't mind naming and shaming, because I will never see myself working with any of them,
Yeah.
because I do not believe in this, what they're doing to our already maligned educational system that we have in
Hmm.
India. What they're doing to it is even worse. Now you have FOMO, that they're creating with the parents. Like, if I don't teach my 5-year-old kid to code now, his life later on will be useless. He's never going to get a good job. My God,
Yeah.
that kid
Yeah.
is 5 years old. What if the
Yeah.
kid wants to be something else?
Yeah, I didn't know of this. So thanks for letting me know about this organization. But of course, there are many who do that, and from an ethical point of view, this is something like, if you ask them that don't you see anything wrong in what you're doing, I'm sure they actually don't see it as a wrong thing to do.
Which is
And
which is the problem right there, right?
which is the problem, and this is like the ethical egoism, that they are only concerned in the outcome, the end result. Like, okay, I'm not here, I'm not doing charity, I'm not the law and order here to protect people, I'm just going to do the things that I need to do to make my money, so then it's all fair. That's their point of view. And this is how they're, let's say, maybe they don't even see it as a wrong thing. And to make it right or wrong, we need, let's say, a third view, or the government to come up with such regulation to say, you cannot put this deception, you can't use deception for to advertise your product. You have to be honest. And until that doesn't happen, because think about it, if one person is penalized, or if one brand is penalized, then that person can say, why am I the only one who's suffering? There are 10 other people who are doing it. Just because they didn't get caught, they are getting away with it. So it can't be that one by one, case by case, people should be punished. There should be a law that's created that you can't, until it's proven, you cannot use such content on advertisements, and you can't like use it as your bait to get more people in. I think I really think that that's the government's job. It's not like saying, okay, we don't do anything, it's their problem, they should solve it. No, I think we should make noise about it, that this is not good, and then push the government, or law authorities to create laws which don't promote this egoistic view of ethical standards.
I
That's
highly recommend you follow this White Hat Junior case, because that's happening right now with this company. There's this
yeah.
guy, Pradeep Purnia, who's
Hmm.
called out their bullshit, and then there's this huge online movement that's happening against White Hat Junior's, I would say, downright unethical, misleading campaigns that they have.
Hmm.
I'll send you some links after we're done,
Hmm.
because
Yeah,
really it is a
definitely.
fascinating case study, and I think it has potential to change or bring in the kind of laws that we've been talking about when it comes to such misleading and downright
Deceiving stuff. Yeah.
deceiving campaigns.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
tell me one thing, Manvi. It's like taking a complete tangent, going off.
Hmm.
But how have you found, you know, uh, this is something I do not have any perspective in, but like
Hmm.
being a woman in tech, how do you find, has that, How's that been, given in a place like India versus a place like Netherlands? And
Um,
it's a market. I mean, it's an area that is, I would say, was predominantly male dominated, right, for the longest time.
well, to be honest, maybe my journey has been different because I worked after Google when I worked for two startups.
Yeah.
Both had women in the forefront of
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. And
So
FreshMenu was great for that because I think that's something
exactly, yeah,
Rashmi did really well, was to really drive a lot, get on board a lot of women and really quality candidates. Not just for the sake of filling in roles.
yeah.
I think that's something she did really well.
Absolutely. And then also before Fresh Menu, when I worked for Baby Away, it was a couple that started, but it was like pure equality. Like the man, the husband, Sanjay, he was looking after the things that he knew. Okay, I'm good at it. I'm going to look at, let's say, the operations or the financial stuff and business development, etc. And Arunima, the who was a co-founder, she came from a very strong background of sales and marketing, and she knew that she was good at it, and she
Right.
used to take care of that part of the business. So for me, it was like pure equality. It's not like he is pushing himself further than her or nothing. I never really felt that there was any kind of like imbalance in that organization. Then I thought, okay, maybe this is like one off, and maybe other places men are like running the show and they don't let the women come in the forefront in the tech industry. But then in Fresh Menu, like you said, like Rashmi was running the show. She was, I think, I never felt that there was any inequality even with our teams, right? Like we had, I think, more women than men in that sense, if I remember correctly.
Oh, absolutely. I
Really,
mean, that whole marketing
yeah,
team and the the BI team.
creative
My
team,
God.
yeah,
Yeah, we were
yeah,
heavily skewed towards women.
exactly,
But I also, again, to reiterate, because and I feel very strongly about that. I think Rashmi did a fantastic job there, and she was not like
yeah.
she would call out everyone on their bullshit, right? Which which was very,
She's
everyone
very
was on their
straightforward,
toes.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I think she ran the show phenomenally well, and really,
yeah,
she made a good role model, I would say, for In fact,
yeah, exactly.
she's been, I think, in the my entire startup experience, she's hands down been the best founder I've seen running a business.
What Yeah, what I really liked in Fresh Menu was that and also how Rashmi dealt with it, is that the focus with which the dedication with which you don't give up and you just go forward,
Right.
albeit all the problems that a startup can face, right? Like, and also with the food industry, it's anyway quite fast. Like like I said, like preparing a hardware product or ordering things from other part of the world, it could take time, right? So the risk is higher. But with food, you can go crazy, right? You can make a new dish, you can be creative, you can sell it faster, you understand data quite fast, because things are, it's like a daily input that you get from your consumers on what's working, what's not working, and etc. So I really like with how much dedication she ran the show. And even though I think I spent about a year and a half with French Menu, I always felt like everything that I learned in that company, I still apply in my existing, my
Yeah,
current job
absolutely.
basically.
I dropped Rashmi a note when I got into IE and I came here. I told her, this, if it weren't for my fresh menu experience, really, I mean, it really bolstered up my resume and my work ex.
Yeah,
And on a side note,
definitely.
you and I got an amazing benefit that not a lot of the employees got. We were on the tasting committee. You know, every 4 p.m. a new batch of lovely non-veg dishes, and you and I were always on the forefront of deciding whether this goes on the map.
Definitely.
That was a
That was the
perk
perks of working for a
that
food company.
that was a perk for also additionally a perk for working for a founder who was vegetarian and couldn't sample those dishes herself. But to
That's so
round up
true.
to round up our conversation before we close it, I really want to talk about your dabbles with yoga. I know for a
Mhm.
fact that you are quite an advanced practitioner. You've taken classes and you're
Mhm.
capable of doing very advanced asanas. I know you had I've seen quite a few photos, and when did it start? When did you get into yoga?
I actually started doing yoga when I was really young. When I was I think I was 10 years old. And I was never a sporty person, right? Like I don't enjoy sports. I'm a
Mhm.
bit contrary to how much I speak, and I may come across as a very, uh, extrovert, but actually I'm not. I just like to do things, my way, or like in my own space. I'm very shy to do things
Uh-huh.
in a lot of people. So I never enjoyed sports, and the only sports that I used to like was like, okay, swimming, running. Even when I was playing games, I just like, one-on-one games like with one person. So I was missing out on a lot of like, physical activity, as you can imagine. No sports, nothing. So I thought, okay, let me try yoga. And there was this one temple near my mom's place, and they used to conduct every day at 6 in the morning free yoga classes for anybody who's interested. So I started attending just because I thought, okay, it's nice, and it matches my personality, because I can like spend time with myself. I fully focus on my own body, what's working,
Uh-huh.
observing my own patterns, like of my breath, of my thoughts. And it really was the best thing that could happen to me. And after that, when I grew up, I continued to do it in my own practice, like at my home in the morning. And then I had like a dip when I joined Google, because new place, new freedom, new money. You start to earn money, you start to spend it like crazy. At least I did when
Uh-huh.
you're young. So
Of
I kind of
course.
lost touch, lost touch with a lot of things. But I bounced back because I realized, okay, I'm not really living the best, best self that I could. I can do much better. I can take care of my health mentally, physically, etc. So I bounced back and I started doing it again at home. But actually, I got back to it with a lot more dedication when I moved to Bangalore and I joined the Akshar Academy.
Uh-huh.
And then I started, I enjoyed it even more, because I think for me, it was like that 1 hour on the mat is my time, and I can fully, like, align myself.
Right.
And then I thought, maybe I should take up the certification course. Maybe I can be a yoga teacher on the side. And I just like went with it and I did it. And I mean, a lot of you also mentioned it, and a lot of people mentioned it to me, and they still do that. Oh, you're so flexible and you can do. But I would like to say that that's not like the benchmark of doing yoga. You
Uh-huh.
can be inflexible. You may not be able to touch your toes, but you can still be a very good yoga practitioner.
But hurts, huh?
Because huh?
It hurts. To
No,
start off, it hurts.
it because you think that you need to be flexible, or you need to be able to do those pretzel kind of positions to be a good yoga teacher. That's not true. I mean, I'm just blessed with a very hyper active, I think my body is very flexible. That's just my genetics, I think. That's the only thing. But you can do yoga really well if you have a good control on your balance, body balance and mind balance, and you are able to control your breath. And
Uh-huh.
I think that helped a lot. So it may sound like very mumbo jumbo, or like these things you read online when people say, but it really helps. The 1 hour that I spent there to practice and focus and not talk and not hear anything, just like go move with your body, align with your body, I
Uh-huh.
could see that it improved my concentration power at work. I could see that it made me a more relaxed person, even though there was a lot of things happening in my life at work. That stress didn't bother me as much, because I thought, I had the time to process everything that's happening in that 1 hour and think of, okay, how should I tackle my life next day. So I feel, yeah, that is my personal, let's say, feeling towards yoga. And I always also say to people that I trained earlier when I was in Bangalore, that don't look at me or anybody and think, oh, I can also do this, because you will hurt your body if you push yourself unnecessarily. You will pull your hamstrings, and that's not cool. Just enjoy it, take it, and it will come eventually. It will come. Just enjoy yourself.
Do you still get, I mean, do you still invest a lot of time in it?
I do at least 3 days a week. I don't get that much time to do it, and it's really cold here. So I try to do 3 to 4 times a week,
Oh,
an
yeah.
hour of yoga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you so much, Manvi. This has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I had a lot of fun. Really good to get back in the game with talking to you. I
Same
hope you
here.
had a lot of fun too. And I really would look forward to you coming back on it
Okay.
again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for organizing this, Gautam. It was fun discussing these things. And like I said, I never really talked to anybody about, like, say, things that happened 10 years ago, like how I started out at Google, and then the startup thing. So it was a good refresher to look back and remember those good old days. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely. I'm going to stop the recording, but please stay on so I can say goodbye to you properly.